I mean, it was cool to like put that kind of thing in front of like some more traditional audiences, like less researchers, less hackers, and more like, the kind of consumer folk that go to an RSA or an InfoSecurity, and to have that conversation. Like it's almost, I feel like I do it as a punishment whenever they put me to like speak on like a trade floor or something. Like the times you remember when we had like sponsored slots at RSA, and you're like speaking in some fucking dingy ass room on the side, and you're like, this is like, it's not as humiliating as speaking at a booth, like, which I refuse. I literally, it's not on my contract, but I will fucking quit if somebody asks me to speak at a booth. But you do those sponsored slots. Whenever I get those, I do a like, this is the bullshit in the industry talk, and this is what we should actually be doing. And that's kind of what landed here. And I saw people sweating in the front fucking row in a way that, like, I felt a tiny bit bad, but I'm glad that we can actually have the conversation, man. Like, all this stuff is bullshit. These people are building bullshit.
Hello, everyone. This is episode 100 of the Three Body Problem. We've made it to quite a milestone, episode 100. That voice you heard there was Juanito checking in from London, where he just keynoted or did a presentation at the InfoSec World, InfoSec London. I think that's the name.
InfoSecurity.
Is it like
Europe.
an RSA equivalent?
Yeah, it's like the RSA equivalent.
How big is
out
it
here?
Attendee wise, I saw your name. I saw your name and picture on a big banner, like hanging in the walls.
It's a proper convention center, proper like giant vendor hall type thing. It's funny. I spoke at one of those. And I'd forgotten this until now. Fabio Assolini and I spoke at one of those, like maybe like 10 years ago, after Sergey Bratis. Like it was like they put a little side room to do some real talks, like somewhere on the end. So it was interesting to come back and like keynote, and Chich keynoted before me, and it was pretty cool.
I want to get back to what you spoke about, but let me introduce my other buddy in the podcast, Costin Raiu, checking in from Bucharest to Romania after running around Europe. Yes, after running around Europe doing business. How are you, my friend?
We're good. There's like all sorts of funny events happening in Romania. We've had a Russian drone hit an apartment building. It exploded. Only by a miracle people didn't die. And today they found a marine or maritime drone.
Drone?
Yeah, like a stray maritime drone in Constanța, which exploded like a few hours later and made like a huge explosion. And allegedly there's a few other drones, stray drones, lost. One of the stories is that these are Ukrainian drones that the Ukrainians launched last night, and the Russians somehow jammed them into believing that Romania is Russia or something along the lines, which is why we ended up. Yeah, I mean, sure, people have seen people were filming the drone like, whoa, what's this? Like, whoa, it looks so interesting. And like a few hours later, there's this huge explosion, like really huge explosion, and people running around scared. Luckily, nobody died. But
shout out to Costin for starting off the podcast on a high
note, man. We're feeling the hit.
What the fuck? Yeah.
Jesus Lord, I just wanted to say hello, bro.
Hello.
Some casual explosions. Yeah.
By the way, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by our friends at TLPBLACK. I want to make sure I mention that. Costin, start right here quickly. What does TLPBLACK do?
I wanted to say that it's one of these code names from J.R.R. Tolkien's mythology, like the Hobbits or like the Palantir or what was the name?
I spoke at an event called Istari from an organization called Istari.
What was Anduril, by the way? What's Anduril?
I don't remember what it was.
It's a sword. It's a sword.
He knows.
Made from the shards of Narsil. But what is TLPBLACK? It started as a kind of secret society between the people who went to secret conferences and sharing material above TLP Red. So there were like hashes, IP addresses, disk images, and we were saying like, man, this is not just TLP Red. This is TLPBLACK. It's like one level above that. So we're trying to essentially analyze, work with very sensitive information, and be able to share back with our customers access and services which are at the highest possible levels of trust, and sharing the most interesting findings that we personally come by with our tools, methodology, experience, by looking at what we think matters nowadays.
You see, the pitch is getting practiced. Episode
Yeah.
100 is there's
It took us
polish.
100
you know?
episodes
By
to get
episode
it.
200, it will be like the most professional sales pitch.
Costin will
Yeah.
stop talking and we'll see a video and hi, welcome to,
Welcome.
these are
to
our offices.
TLPBLACK.
TLPBLACK.
Well, thank you for TLPBLACK for showing support for this podcast. This podcast is not very easy to sponsor because of our takes on these topics are not very user friendly. But here we are, thanks to TLPBLACK and the folks there. Juanito, let me bring you in and start kick off the show with your message to the audience. You mentioned a story. What is that? Another conference in?
Starry.
Yeah.
What are you?
Istari is sort of a pretty interesting sort of consultancy group here, and they put on some pretty interesting events for tech folks, and they have an event every year called Compass, which is pretty kind of like a small room with tons of CISOs, tons of folks that are actually decision makers in that kind of space. And it was nice of them to let me keynote and kind of come in with the same sort of the thing I was describing earlier today, right? Like this is kind of the I'm taking this as a project right now to discuss, same as I did at Echo Party, essentially this admitting this general failure of the cybersecurity program in a more specific way, and in just like a 15-minute rundown and saying, look, this is what's wrong with all of our products, and essentially the way that we're productizing. And I don't say that just to like stomp on the industry, but to say, we have to kind of admit where we are, how we got here. We talk about like the market incentives that created that, because it's not like people were trying to, be shitty or build things that weren't amazing. There's market forces that have gotten us to where we are. And then to cut past the hype of all the, AI frontier labs trying to define cybersecurity for us by actually putting forth, 5 or 6 what I consider foundational problems that have kept us from succeeding that are much more tractable with the technology that we have now. So instead of just slapping AI on the end of the same product categories we've been selling for the past 10 years, here's some like really interesting, what I consider foundational cybersecurity computing problems that we should be able to address with these semantic compressors and these retrieval, search and retrieval technologies that we've come up with, and blah, blah, blah. So kind of trying to set a bit of a roadmap for what security should hopefully look like.
Who invests
after this little revolution?
Who invests in this? Because you're asking the same VCs that have built the same kind of this existing model that you're describing as people just shoving AI on top of. Mm-hmm. You're asking the VCs to go invest in something else when this is kind of like a tried and true playbook that has worked for them. And what is the incentive? What's the economic incentive for them to leave this behind and go do that?
Well, I think most of the VCs seem to be investing into the same mega bucket as everybody else, right? So most people, to be honest, right, like most people are investing, they're not as diversified as they should be, and they're mostly investing into the mega bucket of AI. And I'm bullish on AI. It's not like I think it's not going to work. I think it's the next thing. However, there is a lot of shakiness in the global economy right now, and everybody's side-eyeing private credit and private equity as like, with like a very nervous sort of look because of just the heavy concentration into something that's relatively unmonitored, unregulated. So that's my way of saying it's not like there isn't a likely rainy day ahead of us. And I hope that can be a very painless correction if that's possible somehow, but I doubt that it will be. So if SpaceX's IPO or, God forbid, Anthropic's IPO are not the hottest things in the history of fucking mankind, basically, I think there's a lot of nervousness around like how the global economy is going to shake out. Now, why is that my answer to who's going to invest into this? Maybe right now people don't feel like investing into new or like real new gambles, or maybe right now doesn't feel like a good time to put yourself out there. But I would argue that there is, I think this is precisely the moment to invest into entirely new bets. It's enviable how much easier it is to start a company today. It's enviable how much like fewer people you need. You don't need you just don't need so many people to kick off something real and professional and that can have an outsized scale. You have the cloud, you have AI solutions, you have, all kinds of easy
The
logistical
bureaucracy of
infrastructure.
doing it is a couple of clicks away,
It's
right? Yeah.
dude, like everything. I mean, like we've talked about
Payroll,
Stripe.
HR, all the other
Dude,
nonsense that people say they don't want to deal
I
with. That's a solved
free
problem.
free ad over here. I think we've mentioned Stripe Atlas before, but
Correct.
like what a phenomenal fucking product. What an amazing thing
What
to
is
put
Stripe
out there.
Atlas?
So you go on Stripe Atlas and you can literally you pay $500 and they will incorporate a company in Delaware, let you apportion the shares to all the co-founders, make
Maintain the
you
cap table, yeah.
maintain the cap table, issue sort of all the legal documents, get you your tax number, your EIN, and immediately refer you to banks that do bank accounts for like for companies. And they'll, if you want, they'll manage your payroll, they'll manage your transactions. Like it's just like the entirety of the headache of the actual creating a company is a $500 click away. It's
Into a
fucking
portal that does it amazingly well.
amazing. It's fucking amazing. I mean, this I cannot endorse this product enough, but specifically because it's taking the friction away from, let's say, the three of us going, "Hey, you know a lot about this thing. Why don't we just fucking try? Let's just start a company. We'll split the stock three ways. We'll figure out what it is. We'll bootstrap our way. And then you go get some tokens and you do your thing. And maybe you go get investment if you want. But in any case, like anything that lowers that friction, I think is phenomenally important. Um, I think I'm not trying to convince VCs right now, I guess is what I should say. Like everything I've been ranting about this past, 5 minutes, eh, I was thinking out loud, and thank you all for coming with me, but I don't think we need to convince VCs. VCs will be convinced by the harsh realities of the economy.
Fair.
That's it. Either they're going to pop and make immense money in these IPOs that are coming up, in which case, great for them. And that means they have more money they need to invest somewhere. Or they won't make amazing amounts of money, but their friends will in these IPOs, and they'll feel the FOMO of not having invested in the right place. Or this shit doesn't go well, and it means that for once, we may need to step back and reconsider where we should be putting our money if we are bullish on this technology, but maybe don't think that 2 companies or 3 companies on Earth are going to produce the entirety of the greatest human capital explosion we have seen since the Industrial Revolution, right? Like, maybe it's not just 2 shops, right?
No, I remember Jensen's interview with Dwarkesh where he talked about in NVIDIA needing to do this big giant investment into their entire infrastructure because you couldn't rely on the VCs to do it. That was at a scale that's another scale. Right. And that's the thing that keeps popping back into my mind is if the existing VC system, which is what has birthed cybersecurity, which is what cybersecurity is kind of driven by, if they're not incentivized in any meaningful way to move the needle in a meaningful way, right? Who does it? I don't know it gets done.
So the reason I said the VCs are going to be corrected and those are not the ones we need to convince is I think we need to convince actually the people who listen to this podcast largely, because what I'm trying to convince people of is to take a look, to stop what are already very busy times with a lot of pressure. And I know what I'm asking for is not easy. But the thing we love to do, whatever aspect of the thing we love to do, is now a generation behind. The new technology to enable whatever the next generation of the thing we love to do is already readily available. It's like on hand. If you ever had a thought, an idea, where you're like, if we just did memory forensics in this way, if we just changed incident response so that we could do this thing, if we just changed reversing tools, if we just, did threat hunting in this whatever, now is the time to undust that intuition, right? Sit there and like draw some shit out and go, how much of this is now doable? Not just in the logistics side, right? Like everything we were just discussing, the company, the whatever, not just that part, but really how much easier is it to technologically address the problem I wanted to address if I revamp my approach based on what's now a token problem, right? Like for all the fear that people are experiencing, let me say this, right? This entire industry has always looked at like reverse engineering as the genius skill, like the thing where you admire reversers, and most of the really, really skilled people in different aspects of our industry are some kind of a reverse engineer to some lesser or greater degree. And we know by name the people who are like just God mode reversers. If tomorrow we get a model that can instrument reverse engineering, to the 99th percentile of performance, like just fucking, it's really good. Essentially, we need to just treat that as there's now a product in the market that will take any binary and spit out a complete report and a complete IDB of it reverse engineered. If we can get past the heartburn of losing this treasured skill that somehow we admired, even though most people could never even begin to do it, had no fucking clue how to even start. If we can get past this anxiety and this crippling thing about losing that, then it's actually a really simple question. If everybody could reverse engineer anything that's in front of them for $5, what happens? What happens to memory forensics? What happens to incident response? What happens to vulnerability discovery? What happens to threat hunting? And what happens to malware analysis? What happens to endpoint protection? What happens? How does all of this shit change? What is the point of a sandbox industry anymore, as far as like the virtual machine based sandboxes that we're used to? What is the point? Is transpilation suddenly an approachable goal? And if that's the case, what happens to intellectual property when it comes to software? Like there are so many fucking insane downstream implications, and it's the people listening to this podcast and a lot of the people coming to this conferences who I think are the right folks to sit with 2 or 3 other folks and say, if we were ever gonna do it, if we were ever going to try our own thing, if we ever, we're
now
just
is not the time, it will never be.
Yeah. And I'm not saying because of the investment, and I'm not saying because the economy's whatever, but frankly, if they're laying you off in the 10,000s and they don't give a fuck about what you do, and you know how to do some shit that is not just better than what they sell, but foundationally could disrupt their bullshit hold on a market, that there's something poetic about that shit. You should take that for yourselves and let them buy you out. I mean,
Costin,
there's nothing I can think of better than all of our friends suddenly having $50 million in their pockets and making decisions without the desperation that comes with thinking that you're going to get fired any minute.
Costin, do you remember about 30 minutes ago, someone jumped on this call and said they're so tired, and they're so out of it, and they're so unprepared?
I remember.
20-minute. Thank you for that 20-minute lecture, by the way. Thank you for redoing your keynote.
Oh, you asked.
Amazing. But speaking of layoffs, have you guys seen that Google Threat Intelligence Group, this GTIG, which is like a big focus of the reports we talk about on this podcast, just had a big batch of layoffs. I don't know how big the batch of layoffs, but I know of a few people that was affected. We know friends who were affected by it. Does that surprise you though? They're launching this new active, what do they call it? Cyber defense something? I don't even remember what it is.
And I think they're saying it's not because of AI. It's just
normal restructuring.
Correct. That's the word. Also, if you ask me, I don't know. Nowadays, I think it's very hard to do anything and say it doesn't have some kind of connection to AI. Everything has some kind of connection to AI.
When you hear Costin, when you hear Juanito talking about opportunity and the ability to do things that you've never thought about, when you're building TLPBLACK, obviously you guys are embracing AI in a significant way. But is there like some of that kind of thinking in your mind? It's like, I have always wanted to do this, or I've always wanted to think about this. And, without giving up any secret sauces, are there any of those that you can share with me that you're super excited about, you're starting to dabble in? Can you share us like some on-the-ground experience with it?
There's like so many stories. But first of all, I was thinking, what does this mean for all our friends who, they are reverse engineers and they specialized in reverse engineering all their life? I mean, that was essentially
their identity,
their advantage. Not only that, but it was more like, can you say it was a caste, like like
chess grandmasters, man?
Yeah, chess grand. But like when you have these caste systems where people are specialized, like these guys work the field, they fight, and there was like the group of people who are specialized on reverse engineering.
InfoSec Brahmin are now
correct, the Brahmin, like the InfoSec Brahmin of reverse engineering. And I was thinking, like, what does it mean for that? I remember back in the days when we wrote the report, you'd write the shell of the report, and the kernel, the core of the report, the cherry on the top was the malware analysis. Then you'd have to wait for one of these Brahmin to come and like finish their analysis and come and give you the analysis, and you put it in there like the cherry on the top, and then the report is complete, and then you deliver the report like a gift, and people read the description of the malware and they marvel at, wow, what this thing is able. And if you take that like out of of the whole process, like that becomes, like you say, $5. That is, what does it mean? Like, how does it change? And the report itself, even I think that the whole world of reporting is changing completely, in the sense, nowadays you take the malware, you take all those informations with LLMs, you produce a report, and the audience doesn't read them anymore. Like they use LLMs, whatever, and the agents to read and process the report, maybe summarize it like very briefly, and all the information goes into the system. So like the reports have become some kind of like flying pigeons, like a transmission. It's a transmission mechanism. It's no longer the cake with the cherry on the top.
This is my experience as well. This is my experience as well with APT reports.
Like you were asking, like what we are doing. I understand that there's no more cake. The cake is a lie. It's gone. So what do you deliver nowadays? You work on the pigeons. You work on the mechanisms that take some information, process it, and make it available in a different manner. And there's like so many challenges on this topic. Like I think one of the biggest challenges is private information. How do you process that in a private manner and keep all that information away? How do you even process information away from hallucinations? How do you do it like locally? Today, I crashed like a bunch of local models. I put them all into a loop by like asking them a very specific question about APT28, and they all go into this crazy loop, like infinite loop, in which they APT28 uses this malware. So it's like an infinite loop of these two malwares, which goes on forever. And it feels that running this whole thing in a reliable manner is the new cake. Like the magic comes from being able to replicate this process reliably and to deliver the results. Like that's the new Brahmin.
What did I put out on GitHub like 3 months ago. Here, like I said, when people say this shit doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
they're not playing with the same game, the same tools that other people are playing, because the fucking Frontier Lab people have these amazing harnesses. And the harnesses let them do all this stuff deterministically. And they have flows and they have all this stuff. And people didn't if it's been this hard to get folks to just be like, hey, open Claude Code and just try it and get a sense for it. It was that much harder to get people to go set up a harness. So I was like, well, fuck it. I'll build my harness and then I will open source it for everybody else. And there's been a lot of people that came on board. Like I've never had a popular, open source project, nor do I really want that life. Like I feel so responsible for all these people's setups now. But like a bunch of people did jump on board. And once you have that, and mine's not even great. The latest version is fucking terrible, and I'm trying to get it replaced as soon as I get a minute. But like the minute you have that, where you can have agent loops that are defined in a deterministic way, and you have deterministic enforcement of when linting happens, when errors get checked, did you follow this step, did you do this thing, all of a sudden this shit works phenomenally and you're a fucking superstar. And that's what I wanted people to understand. So to your point about that being like the AI engineering thing being the new Brahmin, like there's definitely something there. It helps when you come with another competency, right? Because what you're basically saying is, guys, I've been trying to prepare everybody for this. What you're saying is you have to just do the systems thinking of what makes this thing hit a stable equilibrium wherein it reliably produces better stuff for the thing that you are competent in, right? It's just cybernetics. It's the same systems thinking stuff I've been talking about since the keynote at LabsCon last year. And that tied to how do we do agent flows. If there's like, that's what Anti-Gravity 2 is an attempt by Google to open source that. That's why if you go on Claude Code and you use the word workflow, it will dynamically create a series of agents now that go and do a whole dynamic workflow for you. But they're starting to release some of that fire to everybody else, but this is the way these systems work in the background. That's why they've been able to make really cool shit happen. And then you go use an open source model and you're like, this is not the same thing. Like these things they're not even remotely close to each other. It's like, it's not that the model itself is bad. It's that they're MacGyver wiring these things in the background in really smart ways.
Not only that, and I think the other issue is, and I'll give you an example. Based on the things that we've been building, it's pretty obvious Claude is like on a higher level than the others. Also, Codex is, right next. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's right around the same level. But I was like absolutely shocked to see what happens when some of these things fail. So there were like a few days when just, Claude failed. I think it was a couple of days ago. And what we use in order to...
What do you mean by Claude failed? Sorry.
Just failed, like it was dead.
I see.
The
whole
you
service
mean like
is
it's
down?
not available?
It was not available, yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was public.
Okay.
It was public information. They had some outage, and it's very funny to see what happens because what we built is a combination. Like you need a combination of different agents which work against each other and cross-check each other. And typically, Claude is devastating to the others. Like it constantly shames Gemini. It was constantly shaming Grok. Like it was, embarrassing to read, honestly. Like the review of other agents' work, and it was like so funny to see one day when Claude failed, how the others immediately it almost felt like revenge. It was the battle of the models, but you need to use them. You need to use models again. I call it against each other, but in reality is having each other's back. Let's make sure that our joint product, like the output, is very important, that it's accurate, it's reliable, it's interesting, it's valuable. and it has like the best quality of information in this amount of pages and words, because like nobody has the time to read manuscripts or whatever. Like I can read 3-4 pages in the morning, and that's what I need, exactly what I need. So anything else is just a waste of my time.
You guys mentioned. Sorry, go
I was
ahead
going
if
to
you
say
wanted to
that
pin
that speaks just right on top of what you just said. I think that's precisely what's happening with the report writing and reading that you were talking about earlier, right? Like people don't read reports. Yeah, that's true, but I think we used to have to read a lot of stuff that wasn't exactly what we needed. And now we have a much easier time having condensed overviews of a lot of stuff. But when
into
I
exactly
latch
what we
onto
asked for, right?
into exactly what we asked for. But once I find that there is something that is like a gold manuscript about the thing I really care about, I go read that shit. I go read that directly. So like what we're talking about is essentially being able to just sift through and then go to the thing. I don't think it means you shouldn't write those reports or manuscripts anymore. I think you absolutely should, but we shouldn't expect everybody to go through them.
And in truth, though, if you go back to the old reports, the old PDF reports, people were just kind of scrolling to the section that you wanted to read anyway, right? This is the equivalent of scrolling to the section. You guys always
Some
talk
assholes
about
ignored the whole thing and went straight to the IOCs. Some people weren't even reading the reports, from what I hear.
That's my point.
You go to the attribution section.
Control F attribution, and then you scroll looking for IOCs, right?
Who this?
You guys mentioned Cloud Code and Codex and so on. Has any of you played around with Grok Code? I think it's what? Code Fast 1? What is
Grok Build?
Grok Build is what it's called now. Is there any sort of parity coming there? And how do you? And the other thing is, Juan, I go back to a short that I was re-looking at our YouTube shorts the other day, and I saw the one where you picked Google as the ultimate winner in this. Like, if you were going to bet money on this, where is Gemini here? I mean, can you guys share what your experience has been beyond the big two?
Go for it, Costin.
I can. Let me start, and it would be interesting also to hear the other point of view. But my experience is the following. I was a big fan of Grok. I was using Grok for everything when all these other models were woke and refused to answer my questions or refused to do my task, or, they were just ignoring information. And Grok, like 4 point something generation, 4.1, it was phenomenal. It was formidable. You could use it like through the API. That was what I was doing. And one of the advantages in my case was the ability to, the direct access into X, because a lot of very good information is available on X. So Grok had access to all that stuff. So I was using Grok. Grok was not available as an agent until recently when they made it official. So you'd have to use like some kind of other harness with the API, which was terrible. There's a version developed in September by a Chinese guy, which was actually Gemini patched into using the Grok API, which worked, but the results were terrible. Like, they were like, okay, not on the same level. So then Elon Musk made the new Grok available, but originally it was only to the Super Grok subscribers, which I'm like the Super Grok Heavy, I think it was. Which
it's expensive.
I was not. Yeah, that was like more than 200 per month or something like this. Yeah. And I was definitely not going to pay that just to play with a beta product, which it was. But like they made it available to Supergraph subscribers, and I played a bit with it, and it's like really good, honestly. It's better than Gemini. I mean, in my testing and in my for the tasks that I run, which are all again cyber threat intelligence related, harvesting information, structuring, gathering, looking at logs, things like that. Like I said before, it's superior to Gemini. It's superior to the anti-gravity AGI thingy, which in my experiments is a total disaster. Like, for what I am using it, it just doesn't lift. It's not good enough. I don't know what went there. I hope they fix it. They make a better version. And Gemini has been failing like terribly. It's also like way below Grok, obviously ChatGPT, whatever. What I added also into the formula, just for fun, to understand how these things work. Some Chinese models like DeepSeek API, Mimo 2.5, things like that. Which, by the way, they're better. In some cases, they have better results than Gemini, which to me is absolutely crazy considering the cost of those things. Again, using it exclusively for scraping, processing OSINT news, things like that, open source stuff. For private stuff, also, unfortunately, there's not many choices, models. But again, recently I'm playing with Step 3.7, which has some formidable results, like just super impressive.
That
Step 3.7, right? It's a 180 billion parameters model. You can fit it on a DGX Spark
nice.
with a bit of work.
Yeah.
I crashed the DGX Spark the first time I tried, but the second time I found the right parameters. So hit me up if you want the parameters and if you want to play with it.
Yeah.
I'll share.
How much is the
shit.
DGX Spark now?
I paid like
$5,000?
this week. This week I bought another one for 3,600 euros
This
without VAT.
motherfucker.
I got another one, yeah.
Wow.
He's onto,
Did you?
he's onto something.
Yeah, I had to. I remember I muled a DGX Spark over to Costin.
Thank you. That one
What
is
is a
lifting.
$5,000 device, right?
It is,
Like
yeah.
four something.
For something like 3,600 euros without VAT.
Yeah.
By some miracle, I found one. I was like thinking, man, what's going on here? Like, will it work? Is it broken?
Yeah.
It was an Asus, not the original NVIDIA, but it's the same hardware essentially. And I got it, and it runs like it works beautifully. It runs these models beautifully, and if you can find a sweet spot, you can, just to give you an example, I produced, we had a project like some time ago, which was to go through all our threat actors and put descriptions, because we had like 1,000 threat actors. And we worked on that for, I think, over a month. Some of our best guys. It was such a painful thingy. And using local models and Hermes as a harness around these local models, in particular Step 3.7, I populated and filled the descriptions of 1,000 actors in basically 2 days. Just that. And the descriptions are pretty good. I would say they're like beautiful.
I think a really important insight in this that so Gregor Stewart is our chief AI officer at Sentinel-1. He's my boss, and honestly a really good friend and an amazing person. He has been like the guy kind of hand-holding me on the AI side and saying, this is how you should think about this. Like, this is like, he actually understands this shit. And something that he gave me as an operating parameter that has helped me a lot when I think about these things. Whenever you look at these situations and you go, what the fuck is our role? Like, what are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Something really simple that Gregor said is that it's hard to think, like to think forward. It's a lot easier to think backwards. And so essentially, we have this technology now that's amazing at generating things. It's cheap to generate things. It's cheap to think forward. And it's the only thing we need to do is to take what's been produced and see, oh, this one's a good one. This one could work. This one's shit. This one's not good. This one is interesting. This one, whatever. And you create a little pile of ready-made, like, things that would take us a lot of time, right? It would have taken a month to a bunch of these guys to come these things. How much easier is it, Costin, to generate 1,000? You can generate 3 versions of descriptions for 1,000 threat actors and then spend 1 day reading through and being like, well, this looks good, that looks right, this is good, that's not good, this needs editing. That's it.
Absolutely.
A month for multiple people, a day now, right? Like it.
And the output is better than those people.
Yeah, it's structured. It's gonna be similar to what you had before. Costin, sorry, Ryan, you're muted.
Where is Gemini? Where is Google in this race? We were expecting to hear something at the last Google had their last big conference
I/O.
2 weeks ago. I/O, right?
Yeah. So it's not. I want to be really nuanced in how I treat this.
Are you going to be like all political on us now?
No.
Okay.
No. I want to be nuanced. I'm not trying to be political. So why am I trying to be nuanced? Because like Google DeepMind is a world-class frontier lab, and they're doing a lot of cool shit that is not Gemini. So people could, if you get too hung up in the fucking, my model's bigger than your model dick measuring race, it's easy to dismiss DeepMind completely and say, well, okay, this
Show
model's
us your
not
cool
as good,
shit.
whatever. But they're doing a lot of cool shit in other stuff, world models, in stuff for like genomics and protein folding and all these things, right? So like they're doing really cool stuff, and a lot of what they're working on seems to be these models that are other model architectures that have like proper verifiers and are not just we took all the data and then we made the data smaller, and then we took more data and then we made the data smaller. So I want to give them credit for that. Now, Gemini, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm tempted to blame the Google product release cycles, because like that's not a place that is comfortable going at anyone else's pace, right? Like Google will release the next thing when Google fucking feels like it, is very much the way that things work inside of Google. So that idea of like, well, but they release something, so we need to release something next week, and we're not ready, but we need to crunch to release something quicker, that shit does not usually fly at Google, even if the pressure's coming from above. So I'm curious to what extent it's DeepMind is not hitting the same performance strides, or they haven't quite cracked how to get performance the way that Anthropic and OpenAI have, or they have, and there's this massive bureaucracy of people just throwing themselves in the way, keeping them from fighting at the same pace that the other guys are. Because there's just no fucking way they're not keeping up. There's a reason I said that Google was going to win no matter what. They have everything they need. They have a world-class frontier lab. They have all the data in the world. They have all the infrastructure on Earth. They can make their own hardware. They have their own phones and phone OS. They have go-to-market strategies and at least 1 billion plus daily active user products. They can shove this AI in your
They're not
fucking
unprofitable.
faces in 45 seconds, and they have a different source of income. They own YouTube. They have a lot of shit. So, look,
Where is it? Show me your shit. That's the thing. And I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you brought up the research work in healthcare and some of the other things, because this is a conversation I had with Gabe in Miami. It's like, why is it Mythos on the front page of the New York Times? Why haven't we solved diabetes? Why aren't we putting these things to solve real world problems that affect millions of people and that can scale improvements in society at scale? And the question is that happening already? Are we just not, the advances are not there? When are we going to get these announcements? Mythos is doing something that nobody imagined.
Ryan, that's why I said I want to be nuanced about DeepMind, because it would be massively, massively unfair to throw DeepMind out and say, oh no, it's just some 2-bit frontier lab, because they're not keeping up with this bullshit fight, this dick measuring contest between OpenAI and Anthropic. I don't know how else to call it. I'm happy that it's happening. I'm just saying, like, it's just, they're trying to one up each other one after the other. Because DeepMind is the only lab that I know of, and please feel free to correct me, that has made like a significant earth-shattering discovery or two, and have chosen to give it out to the public record for like the benefit of humanity. There's a reason Demis Hassabis got a Nobel Prize, and it's not for making the coolest AI ever. It's not because he made the nicest coding agent. It's because they figured out this mega problem in science about protein folding, and then they spent all of the Google compute figuring out every possible protein folding structure and this, you can see that I barely understand this thing. And then instead of keeping it to themselves and using it for their own advantage, they gave it away to the whole scientific community. So now everybody can have an easier time figuring out stuff about diseases and about medications and whatever. So the thing you've been asking for, it has happened already, and DeepMind, they're the ones that did it. Did they immediately come up with a cure for cancer? No, but I bet you whatever cures cancer is gonna rely on that shit.
Fair enough. I'm just saying we're getting all of this energy and headlines around vulnerabilities and finding 0 days at scale, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going to look to see if they can figure out why your blood sugar spikes at a certain time and how we can, like give me something.
It's happening. Now, you know, here's the thing. I've said it that I don't, you know, I'm very suspicious and almost hostile to the frontier labs coming into cybersecurity as hot and heavy as they have in some ways. Not because I don't want them here. I want their interest and their effort and investment and competencies to be built into our industry and for our industry, but simply because they can very easily suck out the oxygen out of the room and make it very hard for anybody to innovate or work on anything that isn't just catering to the frontier labs, because of the way the money and investment is moving around. It's a 9,000-pound elephant just got in the bathtub, and like half of these companies are splashing out entirely, and the other ones are desperately trying to swim along. But the problem is that 900-pound whatever is gonna stand up and leave this bathtub. They're going to move on to medical patents and other kinds of like mega ways to make mega money.
Yeah, imagine the TAM in healthcare is much larger than the TAM in cybersecurity. Like, why aren't they chasing that TAM instead?
How do you pay these fucking burn rates? How do you ever get money for investors at the rate that you need? Well, one way to do it is you go and figure out a way to create slightly different generic versions of every medication that costs $1 billion fucking dollars, and that, you know, the things that cost 10 billion, 15 billion in research and R&D and trials and whatever to develop a medication to lower your cholesterol that then gets sold for, you know, an ungodly amount of money that, you know, everybody desperately tries to find a way to afford not to die. Well, if one of these frontier labs suddenly starts to have the patent to a generic version of this other medication, yeah, you can go to court as much as you want for, you know, discussing whether patents apply and blah, blah, blah. But that's how they're going to mint their fucking money. That's one of the ways. The other one's going to be finance for sure. But then Jane Street's already doing that shit. So, yeah. I just don't think they're going to stick to cybersecurity forever. That's all I'm saying.
Costin, have you seen any sort of non-cyber things that excite you? Have you seen any sort of reporting out to Europe, anything? By the way, is Mistral still a thing? We get through this podcast and we talk about all these labs, and, you know, at one point Costin was pro-Mistral, and like, here we are, I don't even hear this word anymore. Could you talk a little bit about how this is playing over there?
Costin keeps aligning himself with places that none of us would ever like want to stand.
No, but I think it's important to combine the outputs of different models, which are, let's say, coming also from different sources, and that have like very different approaches to doing things. So be it, I don't know, mixture of experts or whatever. I was looking, by the way, our friend Florian Roth has this benchmark, Tor AI benchmark of different models, and in his benchmark, I'm looking right now, he has Gemini 3.5 Flash as the best possible model for the purpose that he's using it to, which is filter kind of triage of alerts from Tor AI. With Claude Opus slightly behind, Gemini Pro, Gemma 4, this is like amazing in my opinion, that Gemma 4 31B, a model that you can run on consumer, you can run it on your laptop, on your Mac laptop with enough RAM, is way ahead of other things like Claude Opus 4.6 in his tests again.
For that use case.
But yeah, but nevertheless, to me, the fact that in his test, Gemini 3.5 Flash is number one, that still says a lot about Google. So of course, it may very well
Yeah.
be that I'm using it for the wrong purpose or in the wrong way, or like it's not
It's
entirely the best
it's a
use
timing
case.
thing, Costin, because like they did release a new model and they released a fast model, which for them is the equivalent of what you hear with OpenAI would be a mini model, with Anthropic would be a haiku model, which is like the cheapest, the fastest, but also the least capable. And the idea is really, if you're trying to do this shit right, and you're doing it at a corporate level or at a product level, you might want to figure things out with your Pro, your Opus, your whatever model, your Max. And then you kind of try to figure out if you can do that same thing with your Sonnet, your, whatever equivalents are. But you're really running to try to get it to to get good performance out of a haiku or out of fast model because it's fastest. So if you have to serve customers, you want to be able to do it as fast as possible, and it's cheapest. So of course you want to use it as cheaply as possible, because otherwise, like, there's entire things, there are entire parts of products, and I can speak to this firsthand, that are really like phenomenal capabilities if you can serve them fast and cheap, but are completely intractable if you can't. Like, that's the stage that we're at. Like, there's aspects of like auto investigation in a threat hunting product or, an XDR product that make a lot of sense if you do them in a fast and cheap way, and are otherwise not actually useful to a customer, to a user. Because if it doesn't load fast enough and if it doesn't work at the right point fast enough, then you're actually holding this person back. So, and it's costing you a shit ton of money. So there's a lot of mechanics here that go into the importance of these fast models. And I think we're not giving, like, we obviously shouldn't give them credit because, like, no one's excited about whatever the fuck Gemini's putting out right now. But it's really interesting that they put out the fast model, because usually you distill that from the pro model. So I'm assuming they have a pro model. I'm assuming that there is some Opus level, or hopefully Mythos level, GPT 5.5 level model at DeepMind, but it's not with us yet. So, fingers crossed, because like they have everything they need. They should be putting out some cool shit. I don't know.
Which
Speaking of
raises a
cool
question.
shit,
Which raises a question. What is Mythos good for and who uses it?
I mean, it's good for reversing.
well, let's get into the Mythos thing, because I have a Mythos note here for us to talk about. Project Glasswing, which is the kind of consortium set up to throttle or kind of slowly roll out access to Mythos, announced an expansion of the organizations in the program. They said, following several weeks of close collaboration with Glasswing partners, the security industry, blah, 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 we're extending the partnership to approximately 150 new organizations. Each one will need to meet our security requirements before they gain access. They went on to say that the organizations in this new batch of additions are in 15 countries, most providing critical infrastructure. Group covers several industries that weren't well represented in the initial cohort, such as power, water, healthcare, communications, and hardware. And they made a point that what each partner has in common, each of these Project Glasswing partners that have access to Mythos, is that a successful attack on their code base could be catastrophic. For most partners, we estimate that a major attack could affect more than 100 million people, with important ramifications for both global and national security. So they kind of outlined all of this with these 150 new partners in more than 15 countries. So more and more people are starting to see what Mythos looks like. We are predicting 10x, maybe a 20x increase in vulnerabilities being patched moving forward. Another bit of the Mythos news is that the NSA has kind of come to a deal with Anthropic to have...
Allegedly.
Allegedly. According to the reporting, there's some reporting on Financial Times, there's an Axios piece on it as well, is that despite the Department of Defense ban on the company, Anthropic has Anthropic has actually embedded engineers within the NSA to support deployment there. So a lot of big Anthropic news. Let's take it in stages. Are we happy to see the expansion to 150 new companies? What do we think happens from here on out?
I'm staring at Costin to see if it's not like the predictable thing from me.
No. Look. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the best person to comment on the expansion of Project Glasswing, but the other one is super interesting. The fact that the NSA is using Anthropic, it makes you well. First of all, can you do that securely? The first question is, if you do the kind of stuff that the NSA is doing, can you do that without leaking your objectives to Anthropic? And can you do that in a secure way? And if you can do that, the question is, what stops you from using it for anything? Because like, as long as you have like full capabilities and you can leverage for pretty much anything, then you can use it like for targeting, for drone strikes and whatever. And I think that was the original problem of this controversy, that they didn't want their models to be used, for instance, to select targets during the war in Iran. But I guess if we stick it specifically only to cyber, so nothing else, if you just like use it, for instance, to automate hacking, development of exploits on the fly, just imagine that you point it at a target and you don't have, maybe it's a new exotic platform like IX or something else, and you don't have exploits for it, you don't have tools for it, you don't have rootkits, you don't have anything. And just imagine that you can develop all that from scratch on the fly, from the initial access, 0 days, to the implants, at like kernel mode, rootkits, whatever, patching the kernel live in order to capture whatever is interesting for you. So doing all that on the fly. And if you can do, let's say, that without any kind of restrictions, which you should, I guess, then I think that there's no reason to actually sanction or like to block them for anything, because it doesn't necessarily contradict what they were complaining about initially. So in my opinion, this is the future. So the fact that they're using Mythos, probably because it's the best available model at the moment. I haven't played with it, so for me, even something like Opus is formidable in capabilities. Let's not forget that our friends at Kali found a FreeBSD NFS vulnerability with Opus, not necessarily with Mythos. So even models like Opus are super good for this task. But it's extremely interesting that you can actually leverage these models in a secure operational manner without leaking your objectives to Anthropic, leaking your tools, and so on and so on.
I have to imagine they're using it in some private cloud, right? Like some skiffed out cloud.
How private is the cloud, right? How private is that? Because
this is that's a thing that's been, so that's a problem that's been, I'm not going to say solved, but addressed in the US, right? Like that's why both AWS and Oracle and Google GCP, they provide something called GovCloud, and GovCloud is like
Azure to Hasto, right? With all their government,
sorry, Azure as well. But like under whatever, like you're basically saying like within these data centers and with these particular requirements and connected in this particular way, you can run all these like cloud workloads in a way that are cool with up to whatever government certification you want. I'm assuming.
The gnawing question on Costin's mind though is like, does that stop me from running a silent against it? Right? It's like that's the gnawing thing. How truly private is it?
Well, like, what stops I don't know, whoever, to backdoor some of the hardware that is running in that government cloud and extracting the information indirectly, and maybe you might not ever know something is going on there?
I don't know how to answer because I really don't know what makes GovCloud. And I will also say that I know that the government uses GovCloud. I don't know that NSA uses GovCloud, or if NSA has a different tier of whatever. But what I wanted to say is like, there is already, whenever you think about like how do you use models privately, there's already services like AWS Bedrock, which they have an agreement with the Frontier Labs, and essentially an enterprise can ask to have AWS Bedrock serve, I don't know, GPT 5.5 or Anthropic Opus 4.7. And that means that Amazon will run the model weights. Like they'll use the model weights in Amazon infrastructure for your company's stuff. So essentially, it's a way of hedging the risk of saying, like, we're not sending all of our corporate stuff to Anthropic, but we want to use this Anthropic model and we trust AWS. So whatever. So anytime you're thinking about that, like, that's the simple market solution right now. You don't have to be sending everything to them.
Apple Private Cloud Compute is kind of like the technological solution for that in theory, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's what, right?
Correct.
To the extent that it exists and anybody's ever seen it, yeah.
No,
I don't
it's
know
real.
why.
I mean, I know folks who worked on it. It's, well, come on, they've documented it and how it works and so on. I mean,
I'm not putting down the technology. I'm not putting down the people that worked on it. I'm saying that Apple has failed so hard in getting into the AI game at any reasonable speed that
It's true.
it's a really cool idea that I don't know any of us have ever really interacted with, which is insane because we all have Apple products, right? Like, it's just, hopefully that changes soon. WWDC is next week, right? Like, we might supposedly we're going to see this new Mac OS and new Siri that's like hella AI chatbot, whatever, that's like appropriate for the AI age. But I hope it's true, but there's literally like a fucking class action lawsuit about expectations with AI, for Siri. So, Apple really has to change something. Like, we have to see something out of Apple. It's disappointing more so than the Google DeepMind thing. Like,
Are we totally entirely comfortable with Anthropic embedding engineers within the NSA? This isn't just like, according to the reporting. Wait, let me ask the question. According to the reporting, right? It's not just granting API access. They have people inside the NSA helping to deploy the model, kind of like this kind of vendor actual participation in intelligence. Is this normal activity when you're talking about software deployment at this kind of scale and importance? Or are we, I mean, if we catch a Chinese vendor doing this with a Chinese government agency, it'll be a big story here. It'll be a big report. Atlantic Council will put out a report saying the Chinese are so terrible. No. Why is it right for us to do it?
Wait. I just want to take like one step back before we react, and we can react. But I really don't trust this reporting.
Okay, that's fair.
That's one thing that I really want to crowbar in here. This is like two random people, unnamed, with no sourcing whatsoever, claim that they know what NSA is currently doing with a Frontier Lab. So, like, right off the fucking bat, there's so much suspicion in this for me.
Are you talking about the Financial Times piece or the Axios piece?
Either one, all of them, the entire
enough.
Fucking thing. Because if you're not sourcing this better, it's all suspect to me. And the one thing I want to point out is that this is not a space without a cartoon villain that we shouldn't be watching out for. The same way that we read certain news and we're like, oh, this is probably Russian disinformation. In the AI space, you have the effective altruists, the fucking existential risk nut jobs who have been influencing a lot of the discussion in this space, and a lot of them have taken up Mythos as a way to tarnish a lot of the discussion in the space, because it's their perfect like example of how AI is going to break out and do all the crazy things and no one's going to be able to control it and it's going to end the world. Why? Because that stupid ass argument is always predicated on, well, it's so smart, it can hack everything. And somebody just came up with a moniker and a model that supposedly can hack everything. So I want to be super careful here about treating this kind of story like it's factual.
I have no reason to doubt it. I agree with you on the sourcing of it and the reporting and so on. Is there any reason to doubt? Like you doubt that
Absolutely.
Anthropic has a couple of people at Fort Meade
I'm not
helping to
saying I
deploy this
doubt
thing?
it. I'm not
Okay.
saying that it I'm not saying that it doesn't that it could not happen. I'm not saying that it could not happen. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't have thoughts if it did, and we can move on to discussing those. But this is one that I'm very fucking suspicious of because it's the Mythos thing, because you're saying NSA and you're doing it at a time when there's like an active contention between the Department of War and Anthropic. So there's a lot of interests that can get stoked up by virtue of this story. A, maybe it's a way to make Anthropic look like it's more in with the government than it actually is. Or B, maybe it's a way to make Anthropic look like it's more with the government than it actually is, but from the perspective of people who want to hire people away from Anthropic, make Anthropic seem like it's not living up to its commitments. Do you want right now the Department of War to once again go after Anthropic and sort of stoke this up? Right? Like there's a lot of different ways in which there's some politicking happening with this story. Because why is it in the fucking Financial Times? You know what I mean? Like there's aspects to this that like and if maybe all it is signaling that Anthropic is in good with the US government again because they're about to IPO.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Costin, how do you react to it from your perch there? I know you bring a conspiracy Ryan angle to it. Are you comfortable with this? Are you comfortable with the frontier model sitting with the intelligence agencies and plotting the way to use this either offense, defense? Or is this just like the new normal?
I just realized that we talked about this, what was it, the Anthropic, the Mythos escape on day zero story from episode 96 that we have here in the show notes. I was thinking like, oh my God, this is how Skynet appears, right? When you put Mythos inside the NSA, this is the beginning of Skynet. Like it's coming, guys, it's coming.
Are you excited or are you concerned? You seem almost like it's like you're rooting for it. Like
I don't know. Like honestly, I still, I'm like I'm very bullish on aliens, and all that stuff. So like, I'm sure that they'll make sure that Skynet doesn't happen. So we'll be okay.
Can we land this discussion a little bit? Because sorry, and I know it's my fault that we didn't go into it proper. So let me drag us into it a little, just one level deeper.
Go.
Right? What is the problem? Like, what are we saying here? Because just to kind of like to unwrap this a little bit, right? There's the way that the public sees NSA, and then there's the way that I think we see NSA, right? To us, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but it's like the God mode tier apex threat actor of the entirety of the internet. And the coolest fucking people to ever do it, hands down. Nobody's ever played the game the way NSA plays the game, and we spend all of our time standing them as like, if there is the highest bar of capability in the history of humanity, it's NSA, and then there's stuff behind it, and then there's some great people behind it, but it's
I think there's
definitely
consensus
NSA
on that. Yeah.
at the top, right? So that's what NSA means to us. And we can have a discussion about what it means for NSA to have access to Mythos in the perspective of how we see NSA. Then there's what NSA means to most other people who even know what the letters mean, which is like this like oversight surveillance thing, either for the world or if you're a conspiracy nut internally. And so there's two ways that we can kind of play with what does it mean to give them Mythos. Then I would go to the other side of that equation and say, what does Mythos mean in this context? Because the fact that Mythos is in like public parlance means that like most of the people who are talking about Mythos don't know what the fuck any of this is. They don't understand any of this shit at all. So what they're saying is AI super hacking capabilities from the private sector have been given to NSA. For those people that actually know more, like us, and our listeners and people who read the Caliph blogs and whatnot, We know Mythos is some next step capability in reverse engineering. We know it's like capable of discovering unbelievable
Documented.
vulnerabilities, like well documented vulnerabilities that escaped everyone for many, many, many years. And I focus on the reverse engineering part because everyone talks about vulnerability discovery. And yes, that is a use case. But understanding how this shit works, there's no vulnerability discovery without being really good at RE. So I'm going to call this a model that is a step changing capability in being able to reverse engineer things and thereby find vulnerabilities. So if we disambiguate it that way, then when you ask, like, how do we feel about NSA getting Mythos, if that's even true, what do we feel, right? Like, what do
What
we feel?
makes
Like,
anyone think that Mythos can exist without the NSA having access to it? Like, just the idea that you can come out and announce and advertise a model with these kinds of like crazy zero-day generation capabilities, and the intelligence agency will sit there and just watch on. Like, the idea that they wouldn't have access to this is crazy to me.
I mean,
And,
do we
the question
really
I
want
have-
them to not have it?
No, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, it's not even a question that
Yeah.
should they have it, shouldn't even be a question. I just kind of linger back to the balkanization of it all. Are we just going to get to a place where the Europeans going to have their model, Five Eyes are going to have access to the big ones?
No.
And then are we at all nervous that we haven't heard at all from the Chinese and what China's capabilities in this kind of thing is? You have to imagine they're not sitting back. I mean, it's crazy.
That's why I asked what I asked. And just to be completely transparent, right? Like, I feel for NSA and the American intelligence community. I know people like Ivan are listening, and they want to throw me out of a window. I understand, but my point is, like, a lot of people turn these organizations into cartoon villains. They like paint them in this way that's like ridiculous, right? It's the absolute pinnacle of like evil in some way, and this very bastardized view of what they do. But if we can take a step back from that shit and just look at our little bipolar world, because it doesn't look very unipolar right now, then, I mean, China has all of their frontier labs, and all of these companies are literally national champions. They are favored by the Chinese economy. It's not that those companies are working with the government. The government is a functional part of those companies and their economic viability. So you bet your ass they're doing everything they possibly can to enable whatever the fuck their government needs. And in that mindset, I look back at us in the US and I want to peel back the cartoon villain shit for 5 minutes to just say, like, do we really not want them to have it? Like, they've been able to reverse engineer anything they've ever fucking wanted to RE. So all we're talking about is them being able to do it faster. Right? Like, all we're talking about is that. That's why I want to peel back the whole like vulnerability magic. You're like, look, man, it's a reversing model. It has to be a model that's really good at reversing in order to be the thing that we're discussing. So if we don't paint it as that, do we really not want them to have the thing that makes them faster, more efficient, more capable, when you consider that the other side of the world is doing that at full fucking throttle and with zero guardrails, zero concerns about any of this shit? No one at DeepSeek is telling them, but you can't use it for, okay.
Costin, can you put Mr. America back in his place, please? Give me
I have no issue with the NSA using Mythos. My problem is with Mythos using the NSA. That's a risk.
What does that mean?
Mia somehow, somebody getting overexcited and saying like, oh, stop. Here's like this database. Use that information. Like, oh, stop. Here's this other database. I'm like, oh, no, don't worry. Like, here's these tools. And don't like, stop. Here's like these other tools. And then like at some point, it's the other way around. Like, stop. I have everything I need. You guys take a break. I'll pawn the world for you.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
I choked on my coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a first. That's in 100 episodes. That is a. I believe that is a first. Um, I don't know, man. At this point, like we're talking about things getting productized. Let's look at this a little differently. If NSA figures out what to do with these things that makes the sense, then please tell us what you're doing. Please, like, let the rest of us know, because people are confused. The future is here, and it's not just unevenly distributed, it's straight up incomprehensible to most people. Like, everyone's in a panic, anxiety. There's economic choices being taken on the basis of like really shallow understanding of this technology. Like embarrassingly shallow understanding. I get that it's new, but like there's people making big world altering decisions who barely understand what's going on here. And that's the only part that scares me. I don't get, fuck it, man. Like, these are companies. They want to be the richest people on earth. Okay, have fun. That's a race that took off and left the rest of us behind a long fucking time ago, right? Like, we're not living with Andrew Carnegie. These people haven't figured out yet that you probably should spend some of that money making people not hate you and like give them something every once in a while. Maybe they'll get to it. Who knows? But like, that race left us. What we need to talk about is actually like, what is the constructive material capability that we are now enhanced with, and what should we fucking do with it? Because like, there's really cool shit to do. Like, Costin can do really cool shit with a bunch of local models that we couldn't do 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like, at all. Like, it was unimaginable.
Speaking of cool shit that these guys can do, like the coolest shit these guys can do, Ruben Santamarta published something on LinkedIn today on Fast16.
Nice transition. Nice. That was good, man.
Yeah, because it's like, this is the same kind of level of threat actory that we've been talking about. Ruben published a piece today kind of making the point. He flagged an old 2018 video of Israel's prime minister demonstrating alleged nuclear weapons work. And he kind of deciphered that they may have shown in that video Fast16 malware in action around this implosion simulation and what the physicists eventually found. Costin, you haven't responded to that piece of the story at all since we were gone at Echo Party. I have not gotten your thoughts on the advancement of the Fast16 story. What do you make of what the physicists have been able to determine post JAGS' work and Vitali's work in Sentinel-1 and Ruben Santamarta's finding here? Give me your take on all of this.
No, it's a great finding, and I mean, a lot of people from, let's say, from start, we kind of suspected that this is what it was going on. Remember, I mentioned like parching and the experiments Iran was doing at parching, compressing uranium, the Manhattan Project, and the fact that you need very accurate simulations in order to determine like if you can actually do that. When you start compressing uranium past a certain value, it becomes liquid, obviously, at like those pressures, and you start the whole process like past the critical mass. But nobody understood or nobody knew exactly how that happens in the sense of the sabotage that Fast16 was applying to some unknown software. And what is extremely funny here, when I'm not entirely sure if Ruben actually says that the prime minister actually demonstrates like with these images of Iran that they've been, pawned, like, and he knows that, or if he actually entirely he doesn't know what he's showing, in the sense
Good
that
point.
those videos show clueless Iranian scientists not like understanding, or they can even say something along the lines like, yeah, we can make a bomb, but we need to reach this value, and that will be extremely difficult, boss. And he shows the videos of them failing without him actually knowing it's because of Fast16 that they are failing. That would be like the top question for me, because I think that Ruben kind of implies that he knows, and I mean the Prime Minister of Israel, with Israel being involved in all these projects for so many years, probably knows what he's showing there and is like probably trolling them, in the sense showing those videos of them believing they need to reach these values. It's extremely funny. um, I thought the whole analysis that Ruben posted is fantastic because it kind of retells the story with all the research that is available from the discovery, from the analysis from Vitali and JAGS, and then going further into Kim Zetter's work with Symantec, with our friends at Symantec, with David Albright. That is a like fantastic, I think, fantastic timeline, and it's all condensed into one piece together with this gem of a discovery of Bibi Netanyahu showing the Iranians fail in their simulations, probably thanks to Fast16. What an amazing achievement if this is what Fast16 actually managed to do, which was is to stop Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and believing that it's not feasible with their current technologies.
This may be so. First of all, amazing props to Ruben. Ruben Santamarta is one of those researchers that like repeatedly does this like amazing work of not just doing the RE, not just doing the malware analysis, but then going a step further and understanding physical consequences and figuring out if it's like physically possible and ruling out these different hypotheses. And it's like he did it with the Chernobyl,
the data leakage, Chernobyl,
the radiation stuff after the invasion of Ukraine. And like he's just done, like, if you are unfamiliar with his work, I cannot recommend it highly enough, and it's just very creative and impressive. It's an honor that he would spend this much time on Fast16. I need to spend more time with it, like genuinely. Like I read it in the back of an Uber like 2 hours ago. But something that it made me think about is at one point he talks about what part of the if there's a process for building a bomb, right? Like Stuxnet focused on the uranium enrichment part of it. And he says Fast16 focused on an earlier part of it, about, I believe, sort of the implosion. I don't remember how he puts it, but it actually made me stop for a second and think about this entire process, this whole chain. I mean, how much more is out there that we haven't discovered? And to what extent did these guys, like, to what extent did NSA and the Israelis and everybody else basically decide that they needed to make it impossible for a bomb to come about by targeting every aspect of the nuclear enrichment process? Because one thing you have to keep in mind, and Ruben points this out, is like the attacker has a complete roadmap of what the victim needs to do that the victim does not have, right? Like the attackers in this case understand every achievement that the victim will need to somehow, that the target will need to somehow accomplish one way or another. And of course, the Iranians are getting a certain amount of insight from AQ Khan, right? There's two types of bombs that AQ Khan, there's two types. There's a design of the Chinese nuclear bomb, and then there's a couple of different centrifuge designs for the enrichment part of this that AQ Khan would provide. But it's not like he's coming with an encyclopedic knowledge of every aspect of production up to a higher level and a higher standard, the way that the US has refined up to this point. So it made me take pause and not just to think about, we usually say like, well, there's so much out there we don't know. But in this particular case, it made me wonder if there's basically a Stuxnet and a Fast16 waiting at every stage of the nuclear enrichment process that we have yet to find. Like, we've basically found two or probably two or three of them, considering that like Stuxnet had different payloads and different approaches to stuff. But like, how, and this also shows my ignorance. How many other processes are there in this whole chain of getting to building a nuclear bomb, about like materials and how you lay things out and how you manufacture other parts of like what's going to go into the casing, and like there's got to be, you know, what's the energy source that you're using for this initial detonation. You could basically litter this fucking entire thing with traps, and at that point I would completely understand the confidence that a US president would have in waiting for a JCPOA and taking their sweet ass time with these, you know, fucking religious clerics who clearly had every intention of building a nuclear bomb and kept saying they were going to use it on a neighboring country without a second's hesitation. And yet we were like, let's take a couple of years to talk. They'll come to the table. Let them burn a bunch of fucking money trying to build it. I'm sure they'll be reasonable. Like, I now can understand that fucking lax, you know, the way that like you saw Obama and Biden kind of walk into the room with like this complete relaxation about the idea that we weren't about to see a nuclear Armageddon, when you think we have made it fucking impossible for these motherfuckers to ever build this bomb. That's just it's an interesting thing that kind of sat with me today.
A question would be, obviously, you guys did some amazing research. I was reading on X. There were like some, you know, how do you call them? Like extreme patriots who were commenting like, why would you expose this wonderful cyber espionage sabotage operation to our adversaries? You are unpatriotic. How do you respond to all those things? Like, do they bother you?
Oh, no, I mean, I think they're silly, but I'm also pretty inured at this point, right? Like, I worked great at the time that the equation group stuff happened.
Very unpatriotic.
I very unpatriotic. Then I did a bunch of Russia stuff, and it's like, I have gone around pissing off all these different folks, and every single time there's somebody in the crowd who thinks I am bad in some way, and they're all like, they almost counter each other out. Like in this particular case, Fast16, you have the Chinese researchers that put out this report. I'm blanking on the name of this company, saying that we were conducting spiritual warfare on behalf of the US government by releasing this, that we were building them up. Thank you to the chat. Comes out with this report basically saying we were I read this 30-page report or however many pages thinking that they were going to show us that we made mistakes or that like we'd fucked something up. I didn't find anything that they said we did wrong. It actually seemed like an admiring piece, which was very kind. It was like literary criticism of a report I published. But they claimed that we were conducting spiritual warfare by building up the US's capabilities in this particular case. And at the same time, you have people on the other side of the spectrum saying that like we're fucking with US capabilities. It's 21 years old. Grow the fuck up. Also, if you're obviously not as familiar with how these things work as you might expect. But I don't think that I wouldn't leverage that level of ire at random commenters on X. I think it's more like there's people who should know better by now. We've been doing this for a long time. And like, there's no point.
But let me ask the devil's advocate question. What good comes out of publishing this? What good comes out of showcasing this? And I'll ask it within the context of this. There hasn't been any documented vulnerabilities found in any of these target products. If I understand it correctly, there's not a specific bug or flaw that's being exploited. According to Ruben's work, it's kind of like hijacking an execution flow of this software and then, you know, like hooking things and then routing things to corrupt the physics calculations. Like, now that this has been documented, what about future use of the software? Should we worry that it hasn't been patched? Now it's documented. What are the capabilities of other intelligence agencies to mock up our own stuff, like blowback, that kind of thing?
Bro, you're drinking too much Kool-Aid on this vulnerability shit, man. Yeah, there's no vulnerabilities to patch here. There's like no actual code vulns in any of these products. It's not about that, right? So I would say that there's a few different reasons to publish this, to the point where to me it was like unquestionable that this should be public. Uh, it was more about like, do let do we know what we're gonna say? The minute we knew how this worked, I had zero qualms about putting this out there. First of all, um, first and foremost, because there's no way at that age that you're affecting any kind of ongoing operations. So what we're discussing here is like, well, you're bringing up a topic, an idea about how to do sabotage that maybe other people haven't had, and that's fair, right? Like when people got a lot of ideas from Shamoon. The North Koreans got ideas from Shamoon, and then you know, similarly with stuff with Stuxnet, that's always been the discussion, right? Like we open Pandora's box and blah blah blah. I would argue that the real problem here is very much rooted in this belief that vulnerability only exists with awareness, and not the fact that like you are vulnerable because you have no defense in some dimension, not because somebody told somebody else that you're vulnerable in this way. There's like it I'm trying to find the right words to express this, but essentially every high precision calculation dependent bit of scientific research we've ever done in the history of humanity, as far as I know, was running on what's probably a vulnerable system, a system that could have been hacked in this way and manipulated in this way. Like full stop, right? Like that's just the way computers work, especially when you haven't put something there whose express purpose is to keep this from happening. So, yes, I think we should be talking about this because now now our entire national economy depends on these fucking high precision calculations. The entirety of our economy, everything we are pinning our hopes and dreams on, is some fucking model weights that come out of some very expensive cloud workloads. And I hope to shit that somebody is defending those and doing their best to try to protect those. But I just don't understand what the argument is here. Half the time, you should be worrying. If this is something that you're concerned about, you should be concerned regardless. You think some ransomware crew wouldn't take the opportunity if they could? It's silly.
Costin, what is still left on the bones of the Fast16 story that still is an unanswered question to you? What is next to do? Because every week, I mean, Ruben advanced the story. You know, everybody's passing the ball along the field. Like, where does the goalposts? Where are the goalposts for you?
I mean, like this story can go on forever and forever because there are so many unknowns in it. For instance, like who are the scientists doing all these simulations, where they were doing it, like how was Fast16 actually introduced there in the first place? I mean, surely being a worm, yes, but it was not a worm on the level of Stuxnet or even Fanny, which had these like exploits for replication. So how did it get in there? Was it like planted by a Dutch spy? You know, like going back to the Stuxnet story, there's a lot of questions. And I mean, probably Kim Zetter could write a new book entirely about Fast16 or just to expand
that would be awesome.
Her 0-day book with like another 200 pages just about Fast16 and Fanny. Probably, by the way, Fanny being the other interesting player in this triad of sabotage tools, which we still don't fully
remind the audience
know
again
how it was used.
Remind the audience who and what Fanny was.
So when people were looking into Stuxnet, I remember there was a presentation at Virus Bulletin, and that's how actually I found out about Fanny. At Virus Bulletin, there were 3 presentations on Stuxnet. It was Microsoft, it was Symantec, and it was ourselves. And in one of the Microsoft slides, they were talking about another malware, a Zbot. Zbot being like this commodity malware, another Zbot variant using the same 0-day as Stuxnet before Stuxnet. And people are like, so that means, that the 0-day was available like in the dark markets or whatever. But it turned out that that was not a Zbot variant. In reality, it was another malware from these stories that we ended up calling Fanny, because it used this fanny.bmp file. So it had like exploits 0 days inside the same vulnerability exploits frameworks. And this one, unlike Fast16, it did have an exfiltration mechanism. So Fanny had an exfil mechanism. And based on the telemetry alone, we thought that maybe this was targeting the Pakistani nuclear program. Remember that India, obviously, they were the first in that region to achieve nuclear supremacy, but then thanks to the same guy that JAGS was mentioning, Khan, Pakistan also got their nuclear weapons. So we thought maybe Fanny was, targeting the Pakistani nuclear weapon. Allegedly, they have somewhere less than 100 nuclear bombs, but like somehow they're not very safely stored. I am not an expert in that, but that's what I heard. So the question, of course, would be like, how did Fanny work? Who was it targeting? Was it like something used on Iran that collected information required to build Fast16 and Stuxnet? So of course, there's so many unanswered questions here, and it's just all paleontology. So like, yeah, I've seen some people like asking like, man, like what's this? Like it's worthless. Why are you wasting your life on paleontology when there's ransomware nowadays, and there's like phishing attacks and click fix and all these things, and you guys waste your life on dead dinosaur bones? Okay, sure.
I know. I'm with you, man. That school of cyber paleontology is where it's at, especially when everything has become so piecemeal and uninspired, right? Like if you're just gonna look at a bunch of crimeware stuff all the time, it's okay, it's great. Somebody has to do that work. I'm glad people do it, but there are things out there. There are beasts out there that should reshape how we think about this entire space. And this is an example of that.
Well, if I can
help
give
the audience, for both of you, because you guys have both run research labs. I want to help the audience understand the thinking that goes into not just what you publish or when you publish, but what you don't publish. Because you have to assume that you guys know a lot more than you say. You decide to publish some things, you keep some in the goodie bag. You know what I'm talking about. What is the equity conversation around what you publish, what you don't publish? How do you, is that a policy thing that comes from the top? Is that a case-by-case thing? Help the audience understand how you think about it, because obviously you have to think we're in the middle of a war with Iran. You're coming out now with Fast16 to talk about Stuxnet type things. That's all related to it. Like, whoa.
Dude, Costin, did you want to answer, or should I?
I'll answer just along the lines of it is definitely worth looking into these things, because we know our adversaries will use the same thing on us. And if nobody knows they even existed, we will be like totally shocked and surprised when our adversaries use the same technologies on us. Just to give you an example, a day will come, mark my words, a day will come when we'll find the Fast16 like malware from one of our adversaries targeting our AI training mechanisms, sabotaging AI learning curves, like making models worse, like making models stupid or like fail, or introducing bugs that are actually so subtle that will be possible to trigger them.
That's even more sinister, is manipulating the results that they give you.
There's a fantastic story from Ted Chiang, I think, in which he talks about like some super intelligent people and the way they're like fighting each other with some kind of vocal or poem-like loopholes, like saying certain words that processing those words will put your mind into kind of a deadlock. So you freeze for a moment and the
Proper
other
mind
person has
control.
time. Yeah, but through words, and introducing these kind of vulnerabilities into models at training, that like whenever you mention like 4 words, the whole model freezes, enters into some kind of a loop, and it hangs. And imagine you use that at the right time, or whenever you're doing let's say some kind of simulation, war simulations, and let's say that one of the targets that you're looking at, they have like a small description on Google Maps with
I hate this prediction.
with those
I
4
fucking hate
words,
this prediction.
and everything goes down. It freezes, it hangs, goes down in flames, because that particular vulnerability was introduced into the model at the training by something similar to Fast16. A day will come and you'll see that.
I think there's something really there's a qualitative difference in these two scenarios. Let me be clear. We have clearly veered away from your question, so I'm not skipping answering it. But since we're talking about this, there's a qualitative difference between interfering with net new scientific research, which I think that is actually research, right? We don't know how this aspect of the universe or how this thing, if it's possible to do. So we're running experiments to figure out net new knowledge for humanity. What we're describing, really, Fast16 interfering with, is black market nuclear engineering, not science, right? They weren't trying to discover something that has not been discovered before. They were trying to replicate a process. And I put it that way not to excuse anything with Fast16, but actually, as we think about the present, I think the only one of these actions that I would find truly reprehensible, like at its core, unalloyed, are the ones that would interfere with our ability to discover net new things. Like fucking with CERN, which is really just running experiments to discover things nobody else in humanity understands. That would be, to me, a catastrophic, a truly regrettable, disastrous thing to humanity, especially if it goes uncaught, right? That would set us back as a species in some dimension, in some minor dimension, hopefully minor dimension. But like everything else, I would like to remind us that everything else is some kind of product or service, and some of those things are really, really important, like keeping people safe, right? Like being able to keep trains from derailing and stuff like that. And some of the other ones are just products, right? Like, and those things, there is a difference of, that we kind of need to stratify in some ways that I'd like to kind of keep in mind with these sorts of workloads, because we're starting to, even I'm losing the plot, man. Like, I'm so excited about this AI stuff that I do see it as like the greatest, most important thing and whatever, and that's never really the case. There's no way that's ever going to be the case in some dimension, right?
Are you going to try to answer the question?
Oh, sorry. I can answer. I don't mind answering. If you want.
Just put me into your head about what you choose to publish and when, and what you choose not to publish. What holds that back?
I think it's really important for all of us to be on the same level for that conversation to happen authentically. So let me start first and foremost, hand to the heart, that like never in my time at Kaspersky, nor at Chronicle, nor at Sentinel-1 have I ever been asked not to release something. No one has ever sat me down and said, you cannot do this, period. Full stop. And, I don't want to take that for granted. Costin can speak to great, but like, because I was living the benefit of having Costin protecting me, right? But I can at least say in particularly Sentinel-1 that it's a company that has genuinely believed that what we were doing was worth doing, and has never, ever interfered in our research priorities. To the point where there are relationships and allowances and things that Sentinel Labs does that I think other companies would be deeply uncomfortable with. For example, maintaining good relationships with the IC. But those things go hand in hand for the question that you're asking now, which is what's the right way to do this and when do you decide not to? And I've definitely pushed some shit that people balked at, right? Like fresher Israeli looking operations, right? Meteor Express and whatnot. And things like Fast16, but also just dropping some pretty spicy things here and there for the fun of it. The stuff in India with modified elephant, like all kinds of the Turkish police thing with egomaniac. Like I've been pushing the line over and over and over again. So I can say that I've kept the spice levels and nobody has ever interfered. And I really, really am grateful to that. And frankly, it's Tomer Weingarten, like it's our CEO directly who has defended that and done that. With that in mind, the things I have ever chosen not to publish have been genuinely like, I can see a real downside to this, not a theoretical downside, an actual immediate downside.
You mean an example?
I mean, dude, we've lived through 2 wars. I've had this seat through 2 hot conflicts that have involved a lot of cyber.
Mm-hmm.
There have been people in the line of fire. There have been people. There was a lot of hostage stuff at some point through some of these things that we've had to work. And you have to make some different decisions. Like I can be a fucking buffoon on stage all day long, but once you know there are real lives like on the line, it changes your calculus, and there's no amount of publicity and there's no amount of marketing that's going to make you feel comfortable with yourself and what you bring to this world when that's
why I bring up
happening.
The topic.
That's why I have sympathy for these guys. Like I have a lot of, I spend a lot of time empathizing with the IC, and I know a lot of people here like listen to that and think it's some kind of Mr. America imperialism and blah, blah, blah. But like every person I have personally interacted with in the US intelligence community has been a fairly dedicated human being. Some of them I like, I adore. Some of them I don't like. I don't agree with them. But I have never met somebody who was just like, didn't give a fuck, or was just like, fuck you, this is the US and we're going to do whatever we want. Like that cartoonish notion. I've never met somebody who's in it because they just want to fuck shit up, right? Like I haven't seen that. So I have a great deal of empathy when the slightest bit of experiencing what those people are doing on a day-to-day basis was a clearly very weighty thing for me. There were ethical questions and they weighed on me. And I like to think that I made choices that I'm comfortable with. And I'm proud of that. But that was a sliver of it. And for me, there's an 18-month period of my career that's this like blacked out phase of complete stress and burnout, and I don't even know what the fuck was happening in my life. And that was me just experiencing a short shift in the life of some of the people that we're describing. So I like to get, ground us a little bit every once in a while and at least remember that those folks are putting in time for the right reasons.
Let me throw the question to Costin, and I believe you answered this question for me when we did the Great Exit Interview podcast years ago. Were there things that you published where you might have had some regret that it was tied to some sort of real world thing that happened that made you pause around, wow, I wonder if this is related to something I might have published? And can you put me into your brain when you were running the Kaspersky team? We've had these conversations around like, Kaspersky releasing things and the Russians, blah, blah, blah. Put me into your head around how you think about choosing what to release, what not to release, where the line is.
Well, this, of course, the whole conversation touches on this recent discussion about outing counterterrorism operations that we went through. I think at the very beginning of our podcast, was it like 2 years ago that we talked about that a bit, and the
And now
fact
we're
that
coming full circle on episode
we're coming
100.
full circle.
man.
Exactly.
We're all getting nostalgic here and shit.
It's very easy when you work in cybersecurity and threat intelligence, very easy to think in a very disconnected manner from the real world. So you think that the things you do on the keyboard here in your tiny Google Docs with, or maybe with your FAR or Q or IDA Pro does not affect the real world. It's very easy to think like that. And it gives
This
you
is
some kind
academic,
of
this is theoretical. I'm
confidence.
just doing, yeah.
It just gives you like some kind of confidence that your work cannot affect the real world. Like these are two very separate things. And I can reverse my malware, I can write the description, I can push the signature, and you do all that, and you think that it cannot affect anyone in the real world because it's purely defensive. Everything that you do, describing malware, writing signatures, blocking detections, all of that is pure defensive work. And I think there was maybe perhaps just one case in which I was wondering if this defensive work somehow interferes or somehow led to people losing their lives. There was a terrorist attack in Bulgaria, I think. There was, I think it was the Hezbollah that was behind that attack, if I'm not mistaken. And it was maybe about 2 weeks after we dug into the Gauss malware that was all over Lebanon. And one might wonder if there's like some kind of a connection between those. Why? Because Gauss was a massive intelligence gathering operation, probably targeting exactly Hezbollah. And it's very easy to become confident on these sources of data when you have it like everywhere and it's sending like some of the best intelligence you've had for years. And you basically know everything in advance. Just imagine what you can do nowadays if you feed all that data into Claude Opus or Mythos or whatever, and just let it come up with what's happening, and just uh, put yourself into the mind of an analyst who can read everything that 2,000 people are doing at the same time and then summarize all that in a thought. And I was wondering what happens when you have like this stream of data cut. One day, like from the gold mine, you jump to zero. And that was immediately after Flame, if I remember correctly. It was Flame in May, Gauss was in June-ish, if I'm not mistaken. It was just a month difference between them. So suddenly, from being omnipotent, omniscient, you become blind. And all the systems that you've put into place, like everything fails. So two weeks later, there's a bomb attack against a tourist bus in Burgas in Bulgaria, and obviously it's being called one of the biggest failures in the history of Israeli intelligence. And that was the moment that I wondered, is it because we cut the pipe? Is it like the effect of me with my IDA, with my Hue, with my Google Doc, that I had, this impact in the real world? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It's not for me to say. But that was a moment that I wondered is there like a difference between types of cyber espionage? Like, is there like, where do you draw the line? And is there like a difference? So that's something, that I've considered over the years. And there's no easy answer to it. Like, if you ask me, there's no easy answer to any of that because at any point your adversaries can copy your methods. They can use them against you as well. They can feed fake information. I think that relying on one source of information alone is a death trap. You need to rely on multiple sources of information. Even like nowadays, use multiple models to analyze the data. You need to feed all the sources, different sources, HUMINT, SIGINT, ALINT, everything into a system, and never rely on just one source of information alone. and always plan, like, plan backup for the backup. That's my prime
I
idea.
think
Like,
the
always have
expression
backups.
is 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
2 is 1,
But
A
and then
good
3 is 2. Yeah,
a good
and
threat intel team will have debated these issues, and like
course.
you would have, differing opinions and thoughts, and do it at your internal meetings. Like this is what your like the great managers meeting or the great internal meetings used to be for, like open, like robust debate on some of these equities and decisions.
I mean, it sounds like you guys had a lot more time. Like there was a lot more time back then. I don't know that for a lot of these, like Fast16 aside, right? Because that, even that, right? Like I might have had it for 6 years, but like the period between I know what this actually is and this needs to be public was a crunch time of 3 weeks, right? And of course things fell through the cracks and there were things you wish you'd done better, right? But fairly comfortable with this one in particular. But I'll say for a lot of other ones, it didn't feel like there was a whole lot of time. There wasn't a whole lot of time on like what to do with a lot of like the early Ukraine war stuff. Conversations were had, right? And I even talked to some of you guys about what to do in some of those situations, but I wouldn't have had enough time to like get to a great managers meeting, right? Like I couldn't have convened
No, what I mean,
a
You
council,
were,
right?
were.
Like
The
a
one
good
in
threat intel
Dublin.
team have already
I was there
you've
for that,
already
yeah.
sorted through these issues at your meetings, and you know kind of like what are some of the signs that would put certain things in certain categories. I'm guessing. I mean,
think
those are the
it-
things we did openly as with the part of this robust debate.
Ryan, like I'm glad to have this conversation this way. I wish, even though like these are the moments where it's like you feel the weight of actually, like if you want to say that you're leading a team, like at some point, the buck stops somewhere and it's
Mhm.
supposed to stop with us. I also wish I knew that that experience was still happening quite that much at the right level in a lot of other companies. I think part of the reason that we complain so much about a bunch of other places is we've witnessed kind of like an infantilization of security researchers, right? Like we used to, as the domain experts producing this stuff that no one on earth has ever seen before other than specific intelligence agencies, we used to have a seat at the table everywhere to say, this is what this is, and this is what we think we should do about it. And CEOs and other executives had enough respect for what was happening to take that into consideration. And sure, maybe they didn't make the choice you agreed with, but I seldom heard people say they were going to walk or quit or anything like that because a decision was made in the room they were in. They disagreed with the decision, but they were a part of the fucking conversation in the first place. Whereas like now, I'm pretty certain, and this is what I hear from folks, and it doesn't take a whole lot to imagine, but like a lot of these other companies, like they don't respect the people leading those teams. They don't respect the people producing that intel. And those decisions are being made without having any of those folks in the room, including whomever. I mean, who leads some of these teams? Right? Like they're these ambiguous things. They're a product and a part of a company. There is something to lament about that. At the same time, I don't know. I think it shows in the output too. Right?
We did an entire episode last week. I'm just going to pivot quickly off of that because
Very
we're
good.
coming up on the 2-hour mark. Do you have anything to close with, Costin, on that?
Sure, always. I mean, these kind of exposures, I think they can happen intentionally. They can happen accidentally. They can happen intentionally, accidentally, and accidentally, intentionally. The most interesting case, mark my words, is when this happens intentionally, accidentally. And I'm not going to say more.
Intentionally.
Always
I'm
the
sitting here.
perfect.
This is some like known unknown, unknown knowns type shit where I'm just sitting here sort of.
Yeah, I mean, like you make a signature for X and it catches Y by accident,
Nah.
or is it intentional? Who knows?
Who knows?
We did an entire episode last week lamenting Microsoft's decision to issue a press release on threatening vulnerability researchers with legal action. We got a tweet on Sunday night. By the way, the actual blog post still remains in place untouched, but we got a tweet with a clarification that said, we're not looking to, I don't remember what it said. Being honest, and I don't have it open in front of me, but we got a kind of a clarification that did not but it did not withdraw it did not withdraw this. We retain the right to prosecute. So anyway, putting all of that aside, we get news this week from Adam Shostak. Actually published a full text of a letter he received from the MSRC. Adam Shostak, if you don't know, is a former Microsoft guy. I believe he might have worked in the MSRC, but Adam Shostak is very well known for threat modeling. He wrote the book with Windows Snyder on threat modeling. He publishes a letter he got from the MSRC that basically said, "Hey Adam, I'm this guy from the MSRC based in Redmond. I manage the CVD, which is also known as Responsible Disclosure. Congratulations on your talk being accepted at Black Hat," and it put out the title of its talk. "I'm reaching out to Black Hat presenters to ask whether their talk will disclose or discuss any MSRC cases or submissions. Could you reply and let me know if your talk will include MSRC cases or submissions? Can you provide the MSRC submission vuln ID number, the case number, the CVE numbers you plan to discuss?" And the kicker is at the end of it, he says, "Given the volume of talks, I'm utilizing automation to send these emails. My apologies if you received this email in error or more than once." Now, people are dismissing this as like a joke. I had a visceral reaction to it, which is one that this is incredibly gross, and I think there's a real chilling effect attached to it. Costin, you mentioned to me when you read this that there are many times in the past, in your past life as well, where Microsoft was very, very hardcore on removing certain words and certain things in your blog posts and publications based on anything Microsoft related. Does someone spamming all Black Hat speakers with something like this sit well with you? How did you react to this?
Three. Can I get 3 minutes here? 3
You
minutes.
get as many minutes as you want, man.
This is the 4-hour episode.
In my early days, which is like 30 years ago, something like this. 30 years ago, I find the 0 day in the Windows kernel. So I happily report this 0 day to Microsoft. And for a month, there is no reply, nothing. They just ignore me. So then, like, what to do? These guys, I sent 3 emails, I think. It was one email, then another, and another, no reply. They just ignore me. I sent like the source code, everything you needed to look at that. So then I post about it on a mailing list, including irresponsible disclosure. I post the source code, being a kernel EOP thingy. I thought it was low risk in the sense that it doesn't, allow somebody to remotely access your system. But yeah, it's more like a proof of concept that there's a vulnerability in the kernel that Microsoft just, doesn't care about, and they just ignore me. And then what do you know? In the next Windows update, they patch the bug that I report silently, without issuing any CV, without thanking me, without saying pretty much anything at all, nothing. But after like a little while, someone from Microsoft, not working in the security department of Microsoft, I think they reach out and they say, "Hey, by the way, I saw that, like, is there any chance we can make up to you by send you a hat or a t-shirt or something like that?" And I said, nice. So I didn't get the CV, I didn't get the case number, I didn't get the vuln ID, nothing of sorts. But like, again, that was like 30 years ago. Nowadays, like, that was point 1. Point 2, I can understand why Microsoft might be very worried about what's gonna happen at Black Hat, because there's like all this wave of unhappy researchers in this kind of, meme or whatever trend you want to call it, of let's drop 0 days on Microsoft as a punishment. And if you want it or not, I think...
So this is some sort of proactive...
So they should be worried. 2, they are worried. And I don't think they're worried enough in the sense that they're not doing the right thing to mitigate this avalanche of 0 days that people probably drop during Black Hat simply because. But if you look at how this mail was phrased, and like what I don't like in this mail, I tell you, is the kind of the disregard for who you are and your research, in the sense that yeah, I'm just spamming everyone and I'm telling them that I'm spamming them with automation. And yeah, if you like get it in error or more than once,
I don't give a fuck.
sorry,
Yeah.
whatever. So like that arrogance, that disregard is not how you handle this issue. Like if I was in charge of that, I would personally, well,
this is someone in charge of community
wrong.
relations at Microsoft, by
It's
the way.
wrong
This is not
to do this way now by email. Like this should have started years ago. Like the person who sent the email should have befriended researchers years ago, went to all the events, to all the conferences, tried to listen to what they're saying, build relations with Adam, Shostak, and pretty much all the other speakers. This feels like it's a kind of a rushed firefighting style effort. Like, yeah, let's avoid the fire burning down the house, and this is the best we can. So it's wrong from so many points of view. You cannot defend it. Like no matter
Right.
what you say, you cannot find a
this
good
happens.
angle here.
This happens because you've disincentivized and disinvested in what was required in those relationship building phases. And this is the fascinating thing to me as an observer of all of this, is that Microsoft created the way to do this. How to do community engagement, the creation of Blue Hat, the creation of these kinds of friendly confines where everyone was like, we were all on the same page. We applauded Microsoft for being the trendsetter in this space. They had it all. They created it. They built it from scratch and showed the
Yes.
world how it could be done. And now you don't have that.
But probably
At
the
the
people
worst
who
possible
did
time,
that
you don't have that.
left, and there is a new generation of researchers who don't remember maybe any of that. Maybe researchers who have never been to Blue Hat or to Redmond or whenever, and they never spoke to anyone at Microsoft. So for them, it's like an entirely new world. And it's just maybe like, the process of transition from one generation to another. And the moment
It's
in
weird,
time when
man.
this is happening, coupled with Mythos, whatever, LLMs, vulnerability, 0 days, it just creates like a unique situation, like the black swan that burns the house down.
I would just add that this guy's been working at Microsoft for 25 years. He's responsible for community engagement and relationship building with security research. He's been there forever. This is not, you know what I mean? Like, this is someone who's been there, and he must have lived through the Katie Masaurus years. He knows what it means to have these relationships and have these things in place. It's just mind-blowing to me. And in addition to the spamming, the AI spamming.
I went ahead and added Nick on LinkedIn.
He's following me on Twitter.
I'm happy to talk to anyone, to provide advice, free advice, if you want to, or just my thoughts, to share my thoughts. So I added him. I don't think he accepted my invitation. Maybe he's not on LinkedIn. I don't know if Microsoft employees are allowed to use LinkedIn.
I don't know, man.
I don't want this to be like the bash Microsoft session. I mean, we've done enough of that over the years, but
no, it bothers me that what we say gets dismissed as Microsoft bashing. Like I was actually at RSA, and someone introduced me. No shade, right? But someone introduced me as like Microsoft's greatest detractor, and I'm like, I'm not trying to shit on Microsoft. I am speaking up for people that I respect and admire, working at a team whose stuff I've always been interested in, using data that nobody else on earth has. They have the privilege of having this stuff. And the things we say, we criticize because they're poorly executed and bad choices, and it just doesn't look right. And when they've done great things, we've come out and sung their praises. And it bothers me that any one company will treat it like we just don't like them, like we're just not cool with them, as like something about their identity bothers us. Like, no, dude, you're being shitty to all the technical people. We've watched a bunch of people walk out of jobs that they were happy with until you brought these new middle managers in. Like you have overworked the absolute shit out of some of the most dedicated people we know, to the point where some of them actually walked out. Like they literally grabbed their stuff and they're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And it, I don't think it's cute to turn it into a marketing exercise. I, I have had other companies reach out to ask for advice, to even just to discuss and say, hey, look, it's not the way you think. It's not all perfect, but this other stuff's happening. And it's why you hear me be so nuanced sometimes about, like, yeah, I don't think that it's these guys. It kind of sounds like it's those guys, right? Because a lot of the time, what's happening here is like mega bureaucracies for whom security is but a bullshit like side thing that they don't think about. And it's all getting buried under all these like corporate politics and palace intrigue. But Microsoft caused some serious waves and, in some ways, problems by insisting that they were a security vendor. And that was something that a lot of us thought was inappropriate in some ways. And it seemed kind of shitty, um, because the other folks who are ecosystem maintainers, if they think of themselves as security vendors, it's because they're offering security services. It's because they're offering things, like that, you like GCP, right? You get Google Cloud and you can get security services and security add-ons, but they're not in this position where, they're not patching and then they're selling you a solution, and like there's something very dirty and very shitty about, um, what Microsoft kind of set up to do. Then they buy Passive Total and they kill it. Then, Mystic, they bury it and like stop sending them to conferences. Then we start to see people running out. Now we're seeing people running out of not just Mystic, but like MSRC and the incident response teams. Like everyone is miserable. So none of those people can say anything because it'll cost them their livelihoods, which are already trivial to the fucking people that run Microsoft, since they have never had a problem just randomly firing folks, to the point where they've had to rehire folks they randomly fired. And like, it's just, I I don't think it's fucking cute. I don't think it's cute. I am not here playing out a personal gripe because I'm some petty, silly person. It bothers me to have things marginalized this way and sort of trifled with. These are people's lives. They're hardworking fucking people. It's not cool that you bury these folks in a way where they can't speak up for themselves at all. And then you make their lives fucking miserable. And then you think that somebody saying something about it publicly is because they don't like your brand. Fuck
The other
you.
side of it is like in the United States, Microsoft is public infrastructure. You're so well embedded into our lives that Microsoft is too big to fail. Like watching Microsoft fail at this is nothing
It's not cute, man.
nothing to sit here and applaud and poke fun at. It's literally from us saying, at least from my perspective, like what you do, like my parents' healthcare depends on it, like flights depend on it, like you are a part of public infrastructure, and watching this shit fall apart and having people resort to dropping ODs because you just like spit the bit. I there's been a bunch of people from Microsoft reaching out to me in the background doing lobbying on behalf of certain people and so on, and I'm like, I'm so over it. Like I usually am. I'm here for all the free advice. I'm here to just kind of provide a little bit of my background and expertise in dealing with this stuff. But sometimes you're just like, I've reached a stage where you've given up because you don't see a genuine effort at all.
It's just disingenuous. It's disingenuous. Don't, I am not against helping anybody and engaging with anybody who's putting in a genuine effort. But so far, we haven't seen a genuine effort. We've seen some bullshit attempts to finesse people, and they're not even good. They're not even like dedicated. So if this doesn't matter to them, that's fine. But like, I don't like like being like trivialized.
Nobody enjoys being mean to Microsoft. In fact, I've spent tons and tons and tons of cycles and time in my career just documenting all the amazing work Microsoft has done around like managing vulnerability research, improving relationships. Like I've had these people on my podcast doing promotion work for them. I've like the idea that I'm some Microsoft hater these days is just so like foul to me. And on that note, Costin, you started the show with some great news. End the show with some great news. Close the show with some shout-outs,
With
please.
some great news.
Great
wow.
news?
Phew.
About
Today's
explosions?
Friday. So today, what exposure? I don't know.
That's how you started the show, with
explosions and shit, man.
Explosions.
Drones and
You set us
Right.
down on a dark trajectory here for our 100th
here we are.
episode. This was
Here
a
we are
fucking
talking about
celebration.
Microsoft.
A celebration of not having any Fortinet or Avanti Odes to talk about for an entire episode. Because there were none? No, probably not. But because we didn't even bother looking. So it was a special day, and now it's ruined.
Close the show with some
here,
shout-outs.
Few things here. I think it's important, for me to mention that from time to time. You know what I'm gonna say? Like Friday has become some kind of a special day because it's a day when the Department of War releases UFO files. Unfortunately, there's no UFO
go.
files today.
Oh, no.
So like, here's like the
Oh no!
You need a background from last week. Go on, we're itching to go.
yeah, sad, very sad, very sad.
No, in
But
all
the-
seriousness, what have we learned since these batches of releases have been put out? Have we learned anything new at all that the conspiracy theorists, like people like me, didn't already know?
Like I don't know what you know, but the thing is that there's hundreds, thousands of videos on the internet of UFOs, UAPs, things like that, and typically the answer to anyone who sees those movies is like, it's fake, or it's a bird, or it's a balloon, or it's a missile, or it's like whatever. Having the Department of War come and publish like 40 videos in which we say we don't know what those are, and you can, like, in some of the videos you can see things which shouldn't be possible under, let's say, normal physics, like an object accelerate and then like immediately take a sharp turn without slowing down. Like that's not possible under normal physics. And then three objects, they join and they start like moving in the same patterns. It just somehow it defies the kind of physics that we know. It defies the reality that we have. So what we've learned is that there are like some of these things that have been happening for a very long time. And I liked how the US government put it. We don't know what these things are. It doesn't mean that they know what other things are, but in particular, these ones, we don't know what they are.
You're
So
just
way,
feeding the beast, though.
you're feeding the beast? Yes. One thing that I really liked was that the church kind of fired one of the chief exorcists because he said that aliens are demons. And I was like, damn, like he didn't get the memo. We discussed like how do you merge, how do you like the Catholics, the church, Jesus, aliens, how do you put them together into one bucket? And JAGS had a wonderful idea and say Jesus was an alien. And
Come on.
I like the fact that they fired the chief exorcist because he said that's some stupid thing to say that aliens are demons. Like I said that if I'm seeing anyone say that on Twitter, I block them immediately. Like it's some bullshit. So you need to, in my opinion, you need to pay attention to this topic, but at the same time to differentiate between all sorts of bullshit that's out there, like with the same with everything, and keep focus on the interesting things that matter.
What? What exactly?
And I forgot. There's a fantastic movie coming up, which is Disclosure Day. Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg is coming up, I think, maybe in a week from now, something
Is
like
it
this.
UFO related?
Absolutely. Not only
Oh
that,
my
but it's
God.
like, obviously, it's called Disclosure Day. And people say that he got the memo. Unlike The Exorcist, he got the memo. So he knows
Oh my
what's
gosh,
coming.
He knows
I
Jesus
expect a
was an
full-
alien.
I expect a full movie review next week.
Absolutely.
I remember to ask.
Go watch the movie.
Juanito, close the show with some shout outs. Did you meet any interesting people in London? Any of our friends over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course I didn't prepare for this properly, but
We have listeners
shout
in
out
London.
shout out to Joe Schwartz and to Josh Schwartz and to Joe Tidy and folks that I got to hang out with at InfoSecurity and everybody who showed up to the keynote. It was actually really nice to see like a very packed room and to get to talk about this so openly. And I hope that it was more inspiring than it was frenetic, but who knows? Similarly, my most sincere thanks to Lucas Kello for organizing this Astari Compass event and giving me an opportunity to keynote. It was great to see Chris Inglis, who's still a complete gentleman and definitely someone I'm glad is still a part of this industry actively. Um, I met one of our, what is it, 67 listeners
37.
there. Simon, who, is a good friend, was very excited to talk about this. And of course, we started going down the usual rant. So it's always cool to meet folks that are really keeping up. And it's an interesting week, man. I don't know. I think a lot has been going on. A lot is happening behind the scenes. I am exhausted. But there is something about like 100th episode that does feel like a good opportunity to kind of skip a beat and reminisce.
Wait, you
That
got a
this
list? You got a list of credits?
I don't. I wish we
Rolling
did.
credits.
We really should have. We should get a fucking editor to do that. But no, look, there's all kinds of people that have joined. There are all kinds of people that have tried to join who were still amazing. We have an amazing small community of friends that are constantly engaged with the things that we are discussing and feeding us stories and telling us about things. Look, the amount of people who reach out to me and to Ryan and to Costin to talk and to tell us when we're wrong, to tell us when we are right but need to understand something else, to share perspectives from some of these places and the things that they're going through and the things they're seeing is amazing. It's a level of trust that I really appreciate and that I hope folks feel is. I hope it means that people feel we're speaking for this industry, or at least to this industry's concerns, and that they feel the trust to kind of expand that is a privilege in a lot of ways. Ryan, you've never gotten nearly enough credit for putting this together. There's no way we'd have this podcast without you if you hadn't chosen to do this, basically told us to just show up and that you would package it and actually make it happen. The truth is that like it's still Costin and I still just show up and we get to be charming and whatever, and then we walk off and Ryan is the one editing and putting this together and getting it ready and promoting it. And same with Trisha. So a lot of, I think we all get all this equal credit on the outside, and in reality, and the inner workings of it is a lot of dedication on your part. So thanks for making this happen, man. It's been 100 fucking episodes. If you had told me we were gonna do this for 100 episodes, even if we'd set it as a fucking goal, I never would have believed you. In my wildest
Shout out to you
dreams.
guys
So,
for showing up, just showing up week after week. I think consistency has been our big plus, is that we've had a show every weekend consistently for God.
I can't believe people are still listening. Are you gonna tell them the truth or not?
We did not count on what are you throwing me off with the truth?
Which
I
truth?
just wanted to say
Sorry.
shout out to wait a second before we go. Shout out to the sponsors that came along for the ride. TLPBLACK, Thinks, Material Security, some of the other sponsors that came along for the ride. We are not an easy show to sponsor. We are equal opportunity shit talking. So it takes a special breed of companies that have the tolerance for this. So shout out to those guys, Harun, Mir, and these guys who jumped and supported us over the years. What else?
You gonna tell them the truth or no?
What's the truth?
We talked about it this week. We said, this 67 listeners and all this.
The actual audience numbers. No, I was looking at it for the last, I was shared with these guys for the last, over the last 90 days, just in the RSS feed, which doesn't count Spotify or YouTube or any of the shorts or some of the other stuff we publish. We were up above 30,000 downloads per month.
It's like 36,000.
And with like a growth chart looking like a hockey stick over the 100 episodes. So, I mean, it's clearly resonating with people. When you go to Spotify, the numbers are just as high. The growth is just as high. On YouTube, we're at 1,500 subscribers with about 15,000 views per month. So, shout out to all these people listening to this show, and shout out to people all over the place in every country in the world. I look sometimes there are people in Oman, we have listeners in Dubai, we have listeners all over the world. So shout out to all you guys who are listening to it. We're at 2 hours and 24 minutes, which is way, way, way too long for this episode. And with that, peace out. We'll catch you guys next week.
Paka.
Bye.